we talked about the research funding. Certainly, this past year has been really chaotic on our front. There's been less calls, very prolonged timeframes of getting decisions on when, if proposals are funded or not. Luckily, it seems to be that things are opening up at least a little bit. Hopefully, we'll get some more calls. Of course, now things are getting pushed more towards administration priorities, which is okay. And we just have to learn as academics, that environment can change every 4 years. You never know. The ability for us to be able to pivot and do things like that, I think, is important. And some of that too, right, is, of course, all of us have said that. Like, it'd be great to be able to get more industrial funding to be able to do things, right? And industry only has so much money, and they're not going to spend it all on academic research that, as we mentioned with translation, oftentimes doesn't always lead to something that's useful for them. That's an interesting balance that we have to play. But at the end of the day, our job as academics, to me at least, is educating students, and that's undergraduate and graduate level, right? We want to make sure that we create graduate students that are good researchers that will then benefit, your companies. Even if things like, hey, we have this problem, we need to solve it, here's some information, right? You don't have to give super specifics on whatever the separation is. Some information to be like, hey, here's a problem, go work on this, guys. And we can seek out funding in this area and then say, hey, like, we'll connect with this collaborators and maybe get a letter of like, hey, yeah, we support this idea, even though we're not putting any money forward. And those types of things can be really helpful.
Yeah, I figured I would let you come back to that topic if you wanted to discuss it more because I know it is so touchy. It's hard to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is really making sure that I can support my students in my lab to make sure that they're able to graduate, right? That, whether I get some of my salary covered or not, I don't really care. That doesn't matter as much as it is to make sure that I have money to pay my students. And at the end of the day, that's the important part. And if we, nationally or so, it was about a 10% funding rate prior to 2025. That number seems to be cut in roughly half. And so that's going to make it harder to be able to fund the number of students that you have, right? It's like I have 5 PhD students in my lab right now. May not be able to do that in 2 3 years. May have to get cut down to three and kind of just go from there. And so that also, at the end, in the long term, that'll hurt lab continuity. One of the nice things about having 4 5 6 PhD students is ideally you have one or maybe one a year or so. And so as they become more senior, they train the more junior graduate students, and you get this rolling cycle of continuous knowledge retainment within the lab. And so if that's more spaced out, that may not always be as possible to be able to do some of that stuff. And so there may be longer term ramifications that aren't happening now, but might be happening in some of our labs in 2 3 years.
Yeah, previously I spoke with Guy Caldwell, who you may know from your university, just some of the lengths that he and his wife have gone through to make sure their lab and Department of Biological
Sure.
Sciences, the lengths they've gone through to make sure that they can in their head count. It's just amazing what he's done, what they've done, what you've done to put the emphasis on making sure that you can keep paying these students to do their great work they're doing.
Yeah, and it's work experience for the students. Even if you're still in a degree program, right? To me, if you get takes 5 years to do your PhD, that's 5 years of work experience you've got learning how to do research for a company, and so that it's very valuable. And the cost isn't a ton, right? PhD students in chemical engineering, again, it's going to depend on the university and the department as to how much they make, and including tuition and health insurance and fees and things like this. But it's not a ton, so it's just a matter of figuring out where does the money come from to get that taken care of. Because they're awesome and they're
Absolutely.
bright and they're fun to work with and they're energetic and they got cool ideas, right? And we want, we you don't want to kill that because we can't fund them, right? That's again, part of my number one job with doing these things is making sure that we can pay the students to continue to work.